This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Love is the universal goal. Because love is what we are, it is what we have always looked for. We have discovered that we don't always understand what love is. And if one doesn't understand what it is, then how can one achieve it? Valeria interviews Collin Hansen. Core is Collin's passion. You might wonder what that means. To him, it is happiness, fulfillment, joy, connection, kindness, confidence, peace. This is who he believes we truly are at our core. We are simply learning to uncover it. Achieving core has been Collin's life goal, not only for him, but now for his clients too. He has been helping others find core since 2017 as a licensed mental health counselor. He mostly works with men struggling with sex addiction and their partners who face severe trauma as a result. The process of healing from such circumstances is grueling, but it is possible with lots of consistent effort and the right guidance. Collin is certified as a sexual recovery therapist and a partner betrayal trauma therapist through the American Association of Sexual Addiction Therapy. His greatest hope is for your healing. Meet Collin at KIRUTZ.com and CollinAHansen.com. Here's the interview with Collin Hansen.
In your own words, who is Collin Hansen?
Yeah, well, I'm a man of a lot of different experiences. I became a counselor about almost 6 years ago, and have been working in the field of sex addiction. But I'm also a husband of 16 years. I have 6 kids, 2 dogs. I'm just the normal guy, run-of-the-mill guy. So.
What inspired you to become a mental health counselor, Collin?
Yeah, that's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. But, I started out as a music major on the clarinet, believe it or not, and ended up leaving that field because I was afraid that I wouldn't make income to raise my family. And then I went into the services industry, and hated that job. And now it wasn't just one job, it was 2 jobs. So that was like about, 8 to 10 years of my life. And I just didn't have confidence in myself. Ended up getting fired. And at that time, I was able to make a transition into what I really wanted to do, which was counseling. But with that said, so I'm a sex addiction therapist. I had my own pornography addiction and never thought that I was going to get out of it. And so really affected my life negatively, as well as my marriage. And, spirituality wise, I promised my higher power that if I ever got through this, that I would give back. And this is kind of, when you look at the 12 steps, the 12th step is always about giving back. And so this is my 12th step, giving back.
How beautiful. I have a lot of questions for you. I'll be asking you a lot more questions about what you do and the work you do as a sexual recovery therapist. How do you define mental health these days?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I think about mental health, I think at the core of the issue is what I call the universal goal. Everybody wants to experience happiness. There's other, descriptions that I would add, like they want to experience love, connection, peace, kindness. And those are, emotional states. And so there's always this kind of battle between, feeling good, feeling happiness and not. And so, mental health is this idea of going from a negative mindset to a positive mindset, in my opinion.
How do you define happiness? What is happiness from your perspective today?
Yeah, another really good question. I think happiness in one word is too simple. I think the concept is much more complex. And you notice how when I said happiness earlier, I added a lot of other emotions. And so I actually call it core. When I speak with my clients, again, happiness, love, connection, peace, kindness, and if I were to use one word that defined all of that, another word, it would be emotion. And emotion is comprised of three components, and that's body. We have our physical body and our brain. That's all one thing, but it's full of senses, and those senses send information to our brain, and so it reacts. It'll tense up. It will relax. It will run. It'll freeze. Our body has all of these reactions, and so that's one component of emotion. I also think there's the brain that has interpretation of our body and also of a circumstance. And then finally, we have the circumstance. You cannot have, an emotion. You cannot have, a thought process or a physical reaction unless there's some type of circumstance. So when you combine all of those things, we will have an experience, a final experience. And when you have that final experience, if you align it right, we'll experience things like happiness, love, connection, peace. But you have to have all three components aligned right in order to experience that.
So is the alignment of all these aspects of being a human being. Have you achieved that?
What I would say is no, I'm not perfect. I'm just like anybody else out there. But what I would say is I understand it a lot better and I continually improve. How I improve. I'll talk a little about my therapy style, I guess. Now.
Yes, please.
I work with addiction, and so addiction is, another way of describing addiction loosely is a bad habit that creates, negative results in your life, and that creates, a physical change in your brain. And so when we try and heal from addiction, we're trying to again, physically change the brain to a more positive state. And so there are 5 things that I learned a while back that create a growth mindset. Meaning a growth mindset means that we are changing our brain over time with a positive result. And so these 5 things that I teach, and one is a spirituality, get spiritual. And so I tell a lot of the guys, whether they believe in a God or not, or a higher power, I say, get spiritual. And so I'd let people know to pray or to meditate to figure out their spirituality. Number 2 would be to read, I say recovery literature. And what that means is just educate yourself, put knowledge into your brain. And number 3 would be write. And when I say write, I literally mean get out a Dollar Tree book. That's a dollar store book. Just a cheap book, and just write and evaluate yourself. And then the more people can get into contact with other people in recovery or in a growth mindset and speak their mind, the more they're able to share and also receive information. And so I do these things for myself to create recovery. And, I can see the huge changes in my life over the years. And so I'm not a finished product. but I have seen results, yes, from those skills.
So it is the commitment, right, to these practices that will lead you to get to that point of happiness. And I absolutely agree. It really does takes commitment. I love the get spiritual suggestion that practice? Because that has been one of my practices forever now, of course, along with education and everything else that you spoke of, writing and being in contact with people like yourself, doing what I do. And I remember that thinking, because I was going from one relationship to another, although I was not a sex addict, but I remember like hearing about love addicts, like people who are addicted to love, in a sense of, I didn't know what love was. I thought I was never loved before by my parents. So I was desperately looking for that, to just feel loved.
Yeah.
And that was such a trap. So and it felt like an addiction, really, to me. So I guess that's the right moment to talk a little bit more about sex addiction and love addiction. Are they actually similar?
Very similar. I talked about the universal goal as we started, which is seeking happiness. And so I think, a lot of people that get into these types of addictions, they're seeking something positive in their life because their lives are so negative for example. And so they're seeking something and oftentimes they just come across something like pornography, or these days it's the cell phone, and in that process, it feels really good, to like in a love addiction, what we're talking about is, having the high of being in a new relationship. But, we're going through the honeymoon phase of a relationship. It feels so good. And, sex in itself, whether you're watching pornography or, sleeping around or, whatever that is, it's a huge high. But there's another concept that I call the great delusion. And in essence, what the great delusion is this, the state that we all have, these beliefs that we have that either a certain belief or a certain action or a certain circumstance will bring us happiness when it never will. So yeah, sex addiction and love addiction, they feel really good in the moment, but what tends to happen, I think it's Charlie Brown. If you watch Charlie Brown, there's Linus, and Linus walks around in one of these cartoons, and he's got this cloud that hangs over his head. It just follows him, and it rains on him everywhere he goes. And that's kind of like addiction, where it feels really good in the morning, in the moment, and then afterwards, it's like the cloud just rains on us. And so it's not true happiness because we still have the cloud, raining on us and striking us with lightning. After the fact.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like with me. That's incredible how we are actually able to see the truth, or see through the great illusion, as you say, which so accurately. So how do we learn, like my case was spirituality, just getting deeper into it. But how do we, in general, I've seen how difficult it is for addicts to find peace, to find their way out of it. My husband's friend, he was addicted to alcohol, and then he gave up alcohol because he's part of the AA. So he's been there for years now. But he's still addicted to cigarettes. He smokes every day, and then he has several different kinds of addictions. Yeah. So it's just like a replacement, really. From your perspective, what is the fastest, the easiest way, although I don't think there's an easy way to it, to find this freedom, to find ourselves again?
Well, I can only speak from my experience, from my own life, and then as well as what I've observed when I'm dealing with my clients. And so, like you said, I don't think there's a really fast or easy way. Addiction, I relate addiction to jelly beans, so when I was in college as a music major, I toured in California with the band, and we visited the Jelly Belly factory. Super cool factory, and I remember it being cool, but I don't remember a whole lot except for at the very end when you leave, they've got all of these Jelly Bellies for sale, and I remember in particular that they had a bag of assorted Jelly Bellies, and then, next to them, they had the jalapeno Jelly Bellies, and they don't mix them, and so, I always wondered why. And then I figured it out. Like, jalapeno Jelly Bellies have a jalapeno oil on them. And if you just take one of them and drop it into the assorted Jelly Belly bag, then you start getting all of the flavors mixed with jalapeno, like, like watermelon jalapeno and,
Yes.
Popcorn jalapeno, everything has this hint of jalapeno. And that's, I think, the way addiction works. Like, I'm a sex addict, and I didn't, in my addiction, like I didn't spend 12 hours a day in my sex addiction, like looking at pornography, or that kind of, time. Some people do, don't get me wrong. But for me, like, it was short periods of time, over years of my life. I couldn't stop it. But that addiction affected every aspect of my life, from my wife to my children to my finances, to my work, to friendships, to my emotions, to, it just tainted everything. And so when we're talking about getting through addiction, it's not fast, it's not simple, because we've got jalapeno or addiction tainting almost every aspect of our life. And so how I work is, I know that, our brains are what they call plastic. They're changeable. And our brains change according to what we believe and our behaviors, and especially as we bring new behaviors into our life. So when somebody comes in to my office, I already know, pretty quickly that when they have an addiction, their brain's already a certain way, and my job is to get them to change beliefs, change behaviors, change relationships, sometimes change jobs. And so right from the get-go, I give them those 5 dailies that I talked to you about, getting spiritual, reading, writing, getting to, no fewer than 3 12-step meetings a week, and making daily phone calls to support people. And a lot of the time, the illness, when I tell people to do those things, they go, oh, crap,
Yes, I can imagine.
They don't want to do any of it. And so, I have another analogy, which is like, an addict is like a guy in a little boat, like a rowboat in the harbor, trying to get out of the harbor and past the surf by himself. And he's got one paddle. And what happens is, he's not all that strong. I mean, he can only go so long, but with one paddle, he's paddling on one side of the boat, and he starts going around in circles, so he's really not getting anywhere. And so what I let these guys know is, you can't do this alone. And so, I have them invite people into their boat. Like, I ask them, will you invite me into your boat? And if they will, like, what that means is they don't have to make the phone calls alone. They don't have to go to the meetings alone. They don't have to read alone. And so when they come into my office and they haven't done their work, I'll say things like, have you made your phone calls? Or I'll say, in the last 7 days, have you made your phone calls? And they'll say no, or they'll say, I've made one, when it's daily. And so I'll say, okay, grab your phone. Let's make phone calls, and so we start calling right there in session. So they're not alone. And when we can work together, and whether it's making phone calls or reading or whatever the activity, now we start heading in the right direction, to get out of the harbor. And lots of times we need multiple people. We need a whole support group and to help these guys get past the surf. And so there's no easy method, but that's kind of the method that I use, is doing the work, using the 12 steps.
Yeah, it really makes a lot of sense to me. We cannot do it alone. And I wonder if there is an end to it. Can we completely eliminate those cravings, the addictive behaviors?
I'm a really hopeful guy, and so I believe in it. Does that mean that we don't have to watch ourselves? I'm 42. I started when I was 12. I started getting really good sobriety when I was 32. And I still go to my meetings and make my phone calls and read and write and pray and all that kind of stuff. So, so I would say that there is hope in sight, and people do heal. But I think I never want to leave this growth mindset, because it's not about the addiction anymore. I'm past the addiction. Now it's more about like building relationships and loving people and the happiness in the core that I'm talking about.
And it's sad, I have to use the word sad, that we have lost ourselves Right, Colin, in a sense of not knowing the core of who we are, which is already peace, already love, as you say. I know I have to mention now that you're writing a book, and that is a book that you wanted to be utilized as the 12 steps for AA. They do. So it really sounds wonderful to me, the idea. And you talk a lot about love there. Love is our natural state. We are love. We need not seek it. So it's sad to me that we have been kind of almost programmed not to know the truth, not to be in touch with the core of who we are.
Yeah.
So now it takes this unlearning process that might take a lifetime to just undo all this. How fascinating that is. So talk to me about the book and this beautiful, to me, truth. It's not a concept, it's the truth that love is our natural state.
Yeah. I believe in God. So, there's people out there who don't. And so they may have to find their own logic in this, but, I believe, God is love. I believe, God is all powerful, and that God knows all things. And, I also believe that God is my creator. And if God is my creator, then in essence, I'm his son. And just like if you look at nature, if you look at any tree, it produces seed, that creates the same kind of tree. And so with my philosophy, just if God is love and I'm his child, then therefore I am love. And I'm born into this world where, the world's imperfect and the people are imperfect, and one of the first principles that I teach is that we are, because we are love, we are fueled by love, and our, purpose is to create love, and so therefore we seek it when we're not experiencing it. And so like we'll seek it in, with pornography or with sex or with alcohol or with, relationships or, all of these external things. And so when I say we need not seek it, it's because it's already in us, I'll have people do like a meditation. I call it the 3-minute meditation, and I'll have them remove, all vocabulary running through their mind, all thought, and I'll have them just see with their eyes, and I'll just have them hear with their ears, but no judging, no labeling anything in their mind. Just see it and hear it, experiencing it in its most authentic primary form that we can. And when we do that, what's really interesting is we just calm. Our body relaxes, our mind relaxes, and we just experience things in what I call like the most, the closest way to God that we can. Because when we're calm, well, in my opinion, that's what God wants us to feel. And to me, that is core, or that is happiness. It's a facet of happiness and love and connection and peace. It's exactly what we're looking for. And so, and we don't have to do anything except for just exist to experience that. And so that's like a proof to me that we really are love. How, in this life, I'll go back and kind of explain the Great Delusion and how that works. And a great book that explains this is Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. It's a really good book. And it basically talks about how when we're born, immediately we start, learning, and everybody around us is seeking happiness, and we just kind of, learn from them and trust that how they do it is how we truly achieve it. And we don't even question it. But the problem is going back to love addiction, you're talking about that, Valeria, we can get into all these relationships, and when we're in the relationship, we think this next one's going to make me happy, and it gives us pleasure for a time, and then all of a sudden we leave the honeymoon phase, and it's no longer any fun, or so we're thinking the relationship will bring us happiness, or we think that money will bring us happiness, or if I can control this person. I grew up in a family where my mom wanted things clean, and she thought that if the house was just clean, then she'd be happy. Well, the house was never clean. And so she was always angry. And so I picked that up, I wanted my house clean, and I would get angry when my house wasn't clean. So I continued to believe the same thing my mom did, that if this house is clean, then I'll be happy. But the problem is that all I have is now, and when the house isn't clean, I'm not happy if I continue believing that. So I had to change my thoughts. And I'll do another plug here for Byron Katie. I love Byron Katie, the work. It helps me challenge my beliefs. And what I learned was that my happiness is dependent upon what's running in my mind and how I'm interpreting my circumstance and my body, my physiological response. And I can now believe that, I have 6 kids like I talked about. So my house is, it's hard to keep it clean. And so I actually think of my house more often as, it's actually a beautiful thing that my house is messy. It's a representation that I have 6 beautiful children. I have a wonderful wife, and it's an opportunity for me to teach them, how to clean. It's a great opportunity for me to learn calm amid the circumstance. So when I think that way, now that truly, when I truly believe those things, truly produces calm and peace and core in my life, despite the circumstance. And it's a much truer way of creating happiness than, this idea that if my house isn't clean, I can't be happy. If my house is clean, then I'll be happy.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Especially when you speak of peace, so inner peace, I call it. Yeah, that's the place that allows us to see all the other beautiful and great states of mind that's possible to experience by being calm, by being peaceful. I absolutely agree. And I know you refer to God as the source of that. And I use different words. I don't use God for some reason, perhaps because it has been misinterpreted a lot of times, and I have seen people around me, my family members, transferring responsibility. So they always either blame God for something that's happening, or they will thank God for whatever's happened. They're never really spiritualizing life. That's how I see it. I want to spiritualize the mind, the thoughts, and my experiences. Inner peace, right? That makes so much sense, which also allows us to see clear our belief systems, the things that we believe in, and the things that whatever is being driven by those beliefs that's not serving us. Right. That's so clear too. And boy, it takes a lot of work. It takes sincere commitment to growth, as you say. I love that term, the growth mindset, which has to do with abundance. So in love, you see, I think addiction has to do with scarcity, doesn't it? We feel like we don't have. This is the belief system that we don't have enough here, so that's why we're looking out there to fulfill that. Does it make sense to you, the addiction being a scarcity mindset?
Oh, sure. Another one of my beliefs, and I'll explain this a little bit. I think happiness is kind of like baking a cake. So I use a lot of analogies.
Yeah, I love that. It's fun.
But I think of making a Betty Crocker cake, and I'll just say an angel food cake, and, everybody knows what an angel food cake is, it's kind of white, and so like, if I don't follow the recipe to a degree, if I add something that's not in the recipe, it's not the angel food cake that we all expected. So, I could add chocolate chips to it, and it's just not the angel food cake that we all know, I'm not saying it's gross, but it's just not the same, angel food cake. So, happiness is the same way. Like if I add too much sugar to my happiness, if I don't add the flour, if I don't leave it in the oven long enough, or I put it in at the wrong temperature, I won't achieve the angel food cake. Or in this instance, I won't achieve that happy state. I'll be achieving something else. And so, I have to align all of my thoughts. I have to align my physiology, in a way so that I can see my circumstance in a happy state. And in one of these beliefs that I have, now this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, so I warn you before I say it. I believe I believe that I have no needs and I have no wants. And the reason I believe that is because I'm still alive. Everything has been provided to me. Whether, there was a time when I didn't make a lot of money, right? There was a time when I was, actually, I didn't work for basically 9 months because I was in an internship as a therapist. I didn't make any money. And yet I think I had 6 children at that time. That's a big family, And so somehow we got by, and there's people who, don't have food, and yet somehow they get by, And so from a spiritual perspective, and again, whether you believe in God or not, that's, I don't push that idea. I just push, find your own spirituality. But, but for me, like, I believe that my higher power, is all benevolent, and he's and all powerful. And therefore, any experience in this life that I have has a benevolent purpose. And so whether I've experienced, sex addiction was really hard. I mean, it was emotionally traumatic. I'll say that too, and yet today when I look back on that, to me, it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, because it catapulted me, into this growth mindset. I have a greater understanding of what happiness is. And what's amazing about that is that I get to share that with people every day. And so I will never ask, well, actually, this is a 12-step promise. Like, we'll never try and shut the door on our past. And so I don't, I love my past. I'm not saying that it wasn't painful, but and so now even today, like, whether you're having relationship issues or your car's not working or you don't have a job, these are all blessings to me because they teach me some type of lesson if I can see the goodness in it. And the pain, when I can see the goodness in it, it creates happiness. When I see the negativity in it, it creates suffering.
That resonates true to me. Yeah, I remember listening a lot here on the podcast, this idea that I'm grateful for my past, for all the hardships that I have had. And I was thinking to myself, oh no, I'm not grateful for all these things that I went through. Like, I would not want to go through all that again to learn what I know today. But now I see what you're saying, the perspective's a bit different in the sense of life, or God being compassionate and showing us the truth through these experiences, pain and suffering. That's life's way of being compassionate, or God's way of showing compassion.
Yeah, I figure the more pain we're in, the more opportunity we have to learn happiness in that circumstance.
I wonder if we can actually find deeper truth, as you have found, without the suffering. I mean, I know that pain, it's inevitable. We all will go through some sort of pain, physical, even, but perhaps not emotional, but physical. But can we learn those lessons without pain and suffering? Is that possible?
Well, I can only speak from my belief system, and, I don't think so. That's my belief. And, it's kind of like another analogy would be like a fish that lives in water. A fish will never know oxygen or air unless it's, you take it out of water, and so it can't experience that unless it sees the opposition or the difference from the water.
That is very much true. And then, I asked the question because I have people around me my family members who have suffered a lot, but they have not really committed themselves to healing or seeing the truth or being peaceful, looking to get on that path, that journey of healing. So that's why I wonder why some of us suffer, and then we ended up kind of here where we are now, having this conversation and knowing the deeper truth behind it all. And some people don't. I wonder why. Why is that? And that kind of makes me sad, I have to say, frustrated at some level when I see them just repeating the same mistakes over and over again.
Well, for me, that's one reason why I think, whether it's, any type of trauma or, addiction, in my case, addiction, why I think it was such a great blessing, because, my wife threatened to leave, and that was so painful. It overcame the pleasure of addiction. That pain was so, and so such a blessing that I got out of that, because whether my wife was leaving or not, I was living in a life of hell. And so these other people, my experience with addiction was, I started, into my sex addiction stuff when I was about 12. And, I look over my years of recovery. See, I think I tried to stop as soon as I knew what it was that I was doing. I didn't even know what I was getting into when I got into it. But once I recognized it, I tried to stop. And so I started in the recovery process. But what I would say is I was very inefficient and ineffective at getting clean. And so, when I was about 18, 19, I got clean for a long time. And then, when I was about 21, that's when the internet came out, the fast, high-speed internet, and I started getting into it. And, eventually when I got married, I carried it into my marriage. And I remember my wife catching me on my first anniversary after having a baby 7 days prior. From there, I went to see counselors. I went through 6 counselors. I think that's the right number. I went to multiple addiction recovery programs, and I would drop and leave those, and I'd go back to them. And so I look at myself and I just think, oh my gosh, it took me over 20 years, and there's still effects of my addiction in my life, just so you know, but it took me that long to get effective in recovery and to get clean and to start growing and starting to achieve more core than ever in my life. And so when I look at other people, I recognize that they're in their own path. And so I let people know, just keep living, just keep in the process. And the spirituality part is, your higher power, whatever that is, whatever you believe in, if you believe in nature or whatever, it'll present to you experiences in your life that give you the choice to change and to grow. And so there's people that come into my office that really want change, and man, they just knock it out of the park right from the get-go. And then there's other people, it takes them years. Sometimes I've worked with people for 3 years. And then there's people who come into my office and they leave. And I am okay with all of that, because I know that nature or spirituality will eventually lead them in the right way, and will teach them what they need to know to achieve that happiness.
I love that message. It's one of trust. That's what I hear. So you trust life, you trust God to show these people the way as it has showed you the way. And I love that, Collin. It's something that I'm very much now into this. It's almost like a relationship with the universe, with life itself, the trusting everything that's happening exactly as it is happening, because
right.
There's something here. If I'm listening, it will show me the way. So that's beautiful, though. I'm really in alignment with that. Trusting life. Wow, I love your message. I love your work and this commitment to heal yourself and others. As you said from the very beginning, this is your way of giving back. So it's almost like a commitment, an agreement that you have made with life, with God. So what a beautiful thing. It kind of made me stop and reflect more in humility even about that. I love that, an agreement with God. I think you should. It's a beautiful title of a book, actually.
Yeah, maybe I should use that one.
I know, I love that. But yeah, that trust, right. I love that. I love everything that you're doing. It's what we need. It's life, the voice of God, the voice of life itself, the higher power, as you say, whatever we believe in, just speaking. So I really appreciate everything that you do, exactly the way you do. It's truly beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're almost at the end. I do have a few more questions for you, the ending questions. Before that, would you like to add anything else that you left unsaid for today?
Well, that last piece that we were talking about is trusting in life. Again, in my life, it took me 20 plus years, to get out of my addiction. Then, my life wasn't just like peaches and cream, it still isn't, like there's ups and downs. And so, for anybody struggling out there, my message is just keep living. And as you keep living, keep searching, read books, listen to people, who've had experience in your struggle, and in time, things work themselves out. So you can hope and know that, better days are to come. They come. They just do. So stay in the process.
I love that. Trust the process, right? Don't give up. I used not to believe in free will, that we had the free will to choose whatever we want, But now I'm kind of revising that idea. It seems like we do have a choice, which is very interesting too.
That is a really deep concept and really complex.
Yeah.
In my mind. And, I have battled that same topic, like wondering, do we have free will? Because like an addiction, for example, or in this idea that, we're born into this world and we learn from other people, what we learn. And our body works in a way that as we learn, it solidifies processes or automates them in a subconscious format. So like a good example of that, I don't know if you've ever done this, Valeria, but I have, where I hop in my car. I'm just so used to driving in my car. I start like daydreaming while I'm driving.
Yeah, that's
and then yeah.
I don't drive, so that wouldn't be my experience. But I know what you're saying.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I mean, there are other experiences, but I'll just finish this one just to stay with this idea. But sometimes I'll be daydreaming, and I drive so much that I can daydream and drive at the same time. And then, sometimes I'll arrive somewhere. It doesn't happen very often, but I've arrived someplace, that I was heading to, and I go, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Right, like how did this happen?
Yes.
And so that proves to us that we have these automations or, habits. I don't know what you want to call them, but they run in the background and we don't even have to think about them. And so in essence, we create those subconscious processes that we don't have to think about anymore. And they are habits. So we're talking about addiction. That's a habit. Well, so is getting angry, or so is laughing at a particular joke and not laughing at another. What you wear, like some people go to great lengths and think about what they wear, but some people don't. They just put on their clothes. Like, do you know which shoe you put on first? Do you think about tying your shoes? Like, all of these things are really automatic. And so in essence, like in that scenario, when we are in that automatic behavior, we're not thinking, and so I don't think in certain instances that we have a choice when we're not aware. But the choice really comes in when, I talked about the 3-minute meditation. There's all sorts of meditations, or writing, slowing down our mind to discover these automatic thoughts, these automatic behaviors. And we really slow down, we can also determine what the purpose of them are. Like, I talked about like getting angry when my house is dirty, right? When I slow down, and I really think about why I get angry, I have learned that I get angry in order to be happy, which is a delusion, because when I get angry, I cannot be happy in that moment. I have this belief again that if my house is clean, then I'll be happy. I'm predicting the future. But what's interesting about that is when my house has been clean, I've been angry, meaning that it's not the house that produces my anger or happiness. But so I've settled on that when I get angry, I'm trying to produce happiness, which does not work. It never has. It never will. And so instead of doing that process and sitting and believing that, now over time and with learning and effort and focus, I can walk into my house and it can be completely dirty and I can be fine. And that was the choice I made because I became aware of my thought processes and my behaviors.
Yeah. I mean, you say that so clearly. It makes so much sense to me. So it's the work of deconstructing these mental ideas that we have accumulated throughout life, which is, it's not an easy process to do, to just let go of all those programmings. From what I hear, I've talked to so many people, it always goes back to that. Some people have said that in one day, one experience, spiritual experience, they have deconstructed, destroyed all of them at once. They call it spiritual awakening, enlightenment. So I guess it could happen too for some of us. But for most of us, it takes effort, right? It takes that trust that you speak of. And you're right, when I remember being so programmed and addictive, I would say obsessed with the idea of finding love elsewhere, that I didn't have a choice. I was just doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results, and not even realizing it. So it's almost like being crazy, but you don't know that you're crazy, which is, it makes sense to me so much now. So finding sanity, it is kind of slowing down. How interesting that you say that. It's relaxing and it's finding peace. Yeah, that it goes back to that again, because it really feels like very too fast. That the programmings, the thinking, overthinking, it's just so fast. It just does everything so quickly, automatically. So the antidote to that, it is slowing down. It makes so much sense to me what you said. Would you like to add anything to it, Collin, at this point, or?
I would just say that, I think there is the idea that there's quick fixes, right? And I do think for certain problems, there are quick fixes. And you talked about people having, this enlightenment or awakening. And I do believe that can happen. Who am I to tell them that they didn't have that experience, right? And so, but like you said, I really agree that for most of us, this happens over long periods of time with work and, getting into that growth mindset and, listening to people who've gone before. Well, I've got this huge list that I just wrote down of all these people that I've listened to. And I don't care who you listen to, necessarily, because you'll find those people that you align with best. But if you stay in that process of reading and educating yourself and writing and learning how to write in a way that enlightens your mind or educates you about yourself, you will slowly but surely have, aha moments. And it's the aha moment, in my opinion, that creates healing in our lives. So if we keep creating that over and over and over and over again, what we do is create a new habit that produces real results.
Right. At this time, what do you feel is the world's greatest need, the world as a whole, collectively?
Yeah, that goes right back to what we were talking at the very beginning, is to truly be able to experience core. When people truly experience core, in my opinion, it doesn't matter the circumstance. People treat each other appropriately, and we end, all violence. We end all anger, hatred. We accept people for who they are, and yet, if something is off, we still help with respect and dignity. And so it is truly learning how to love and to heal from, our past, worldly education, I guess I would say.
Right. Yeah. It goes back to everything that we have been talking about, right? Finding the true us, right? That's here, was never hidden, really. Thank you so much again for your presence here today, for the work you do, for your beautiful intention and sincere desire to help others. It's precious to me. And before we say goodbye, where can we find more information about you, your work, services, and future projects?
Yeah, you bet. You guys can find me at keyroots.com, where I spell that KIRUTZ.com, or you can also go to collinhansen.com.
Wonderful. I'll have those links on your podcast profile too. Thank you so much again, Collin, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Valeria.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Collin Hansen and his work, please visit KIRUTZ.com and CollinAHansen.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.